Yes, indeed. Thanks for that, Penny. We are entering a time of year where the drop in temperatures have a direct effect on the increase of burn victims. And joining us this morning to chat more about burn awareness is wound specialist Dr. Ethel Andrews. As always, you at home can join in the chat by calling us. We're on 011-447-1742 or 1620, or you can comment on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I must say, it seems a careless thing to say, but can winter be regarded as burn season?
So we do see an increase in burns over the winter period because now people are using the heat sources and they're bringing it into the informal settlements, for instance. So you would see an increase. But to say that it is isolated burn season wouldn't be correct because we also do experience burns in the summer period. So winter is a busy season, but so is summer also. So
it's not necessarily the only season where you have a high increase, because in summer, I think maybe then with the brides and all that kind of thing, you have similar incidents.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So what should people be mindful of? I mean, when it comes to the precautions they should take, especially like you're saying, trying to heat up houses and all that kind of thing. What kind of precautions should they be putting in place?
In informal settlements, we advise people not to leave the heat source unattended. So if you're going to have a candle, don't leave it alone because that candle falls over and a shack literally burns down in a few seconds. We have got what is called a jar where they put a bit of sand inside the jar with the candle. So if the candle does fall over, the sand would then literally kill the fire, and then that way it then stops. Some of the things that we could be doing is, for instance, pouring in the cold water first before you put in the boiling water to wash the child or to wash yourself. So just not to leave heat unattended.
Okay, let's talk a bit more about that, because when you speak about when we speak about burns in general, people automatically assume it's fire related. There has to be some sort of fire involved. But burning is not just fire. I mean, like you're saying now, water. A child can burn in a bath.
Yeah. So in South Africa, or across the world, most pediatric burns are from water, because we always, like children, it's in their nature to be inquisitive, and they pull cords and stuff down because they want to explore. So with children, 55% of the burns are from scalds, whereas in adults, it would be more fire-related, etc.
So when basically the tip you're giving now, you're saying when you're pouring your bath water, you want to bath your child, you start with cold water first, because most people don't do that. Most people pour hot water and then try to cool the temperature.
Yeah, the issue with that is that child, while you are busy going to fetch the cold water, then climbs into that bucket or into the bath, and then the impact of that is devastating, and this is what we see often happening.
So from like a hot bath water, what kind of burns can a child sustain?
So there are different degrees of a burn or different depths. So depending on if you just lose the first layer of your skin, we used to call it in layman's term a first degree burn. So depending with bath water, it's normally not that deep, but you can get very serious burns because it depends on the temperature of the water and then how long the child is exposed to it. So you and I would put our foot in, we would burn, and we would remove it immediately. But what happens to the child that literally falls into that bucket that is sitting on the floor?
Okay. So in terms of the degrees now you're speaking about, I hear you say the first layer of skin is called a first degree burn. So does that mean the deeper you go into the skin, is that how the degrees are determined? How do you differentiate?
Yeah, so it is dependent on the depth of the burn. So the skin has got 3 layers. The first layer is the epidermal, dermal, and then deep dermal. So in the medical world, we call it superficial, dermal burn, and then full thickness. But for people on the street, they would call it a first degree burn, which means that just the first layer of the skin is gone. A second degree burn means that you have gone into the second layer of the skin, and then a third degree burn means that it has obviously gone a bit deeper.
So is third degree would obviously be the worst burn, and do you go beyond that or no?
No, you can go deeper than that, because when you actually hit the muscle, then it would be a full thickness burn. So
full thickness?
Yes, and
okay.
These burns don't heal by themselves. The patient then needs to be admitted, and they need to do a skin graft on the patient.
Okay, so in terms of the rehabilitation process, take us through exactly the steps involved. Let's say it is like when a patient has to be admitted, a full thickness burn, you say.
Yeah.
What is the whole process, basically the rehabilitation process there?
So the first phase with rehabilitation happens long after, because when the patient is admitted, we first need to save the life, and then we need to make sure that the patient heals. After they have then healed, it can take up to 2 years for the wound to heal completely. In that time, they would have physiotherapy to make sure that they retain movement. We need to let them have occupational therapy so that they don't develop contractures. And then they get home, they go home and they get discharged, and then they need to come back and do play therapy. If it is a child, for instance, they need to continue with occupational therapy so that they don't develop contractures on their hands. So the rehabilitation phase that you speak about can take years, because the burn, we must understand that the impact of the burn is not just the burn and it happens now. It has got long-lasting, devastating impacts. The pain that the patient experiences is real. And long after the burn, they might still have nightmares about the pain. And so the rehabilitation is not just about the physical that happens to the body, it's also about the psychological and the impact of that. I mean, we burn and we tend to forget about it, but what about the patient that has got a full thickness burn that is over a very large surface of their body? Because we must remember that the skin is the biggest organ, and this is how you present to the world, realistically speaking. So if you are scarred very badly, these scars are then seen in society and people tend to be ostracized.
So there's a psychological side to it as well. And so, like you say, it's an ongoing rehabilitation process.
Yeah.
In terms, it sounds really costly. That's what I'm trying to get to, because if you look at something like that, it's a long process over an extended period of time. I mean, if you don't have medical aid, are we equipped to deal with that kind of thing in the government sphere?
So the sad reality is that the biggest impact of burns is felt where we have got the least resources in the government sector. So the government has done a lot of work and they have made funds available, but it's clearly not enough. But we have centers of excellence in South Africa, the Red Cross Children's Hospital, for instance, Grosani Baragwanath, Edendale Hospital, where we are doing what they are doing in first worlds, if not better. So if you're asking if we are equipped to deal with it, definitely we are. I think we are more equipped than most other countries. Are we doing enough? Not really, because like with anything, prevention is always better than having to treat the problem. So you would imagine something as simple as putting in the cold water first, and then the saving would be 2 years of medical care. Of course.
Well, there's a few tips. Put cold water in before you put the hot water. I like the one with the candle. You say put a candle in a jar with some sand. That'll light up that if you need to use a candle.
Yeah.
Well, those are some of the tips you can use. Doctor, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
That was a wound specialist, Dr. Ethel Andrews, chatting to us about burn awareness in this winter season that we are entering. So do stay tuned to Sunrise. A lot more to come here on the show.